With today's technology, connecting with strangers seems easy and almost harmless. Unfortunately, the eerie realm of dating apps is not always just full of fun and romance. Prepare yourself as we navigate the chilling stories of eerie encounters that real people have experienced. This video will mesmerize you with the mysterious and horrifying underbelly of online dating. Number 1. Catfish cult terror. In the digital age, finding love online has become a common phenomena. But in the case of Jessica, a 26-year-old schoolteacher, her pursuit of love turned into a horrifying nightmare. Jessica had been on the dating app for a couple of weeks. She liked the convenience and connection it offered. There, she met a man named Daniel. He seemed charismatic and traditional. He didn't believe in sharing photos online and insisted on meeting in person. After chatting with him consistently for a week, Jessica found herself falling for his allure. Daniel suggested a date at a local cafe in town, but said he would like to introduce her to some of his friends. Thrilled at the prospect of an actual date, Jessica agreed. When she arrived, Daniel was even more charming and handsome than she'd imagined. His friends, however, were not what she had envisioned. Dressed in all white, they greeted her with an eerie calm, sending a shiver down her spine. The day turned to night. The group led Jessica to a secluded nearby beach. An impromptu bonfire was struck up, providing the only source of light, casting long, terrifying shadows on the faces of the group dressed in white. Jessica began to feel a creeping unease. She looked to Daniel for comfort, but his charming smile was replaced with a cold, apprehensive gaze. Was it just a trick of the light, or was he different? She didn't get the chance to contemplate as one of them approached her, extending a catfish. "Our offering," he said, his voice cold and emotionless. Confused and frightened, Jessica wanted to flee. Instead, she was paralyzed with fear as she watched the group chant rhythmically around the fire, swaying the catfish in her direction. Suddenly, the jovial beach picnic had morphed into a terrifying ritual. She looked again at Daniel. He seemed to be at ease, participating in the ritual with fervor, almost looking pleased at her terror. That's when realization struck. She had been catfished, not in the traditional sense, but far worse. Daniel wasn't seeking a romantic partner, but a naive victim for his cult's terrifying ritual. She tried to make a run for it, but her horror-addled body didn't cooperate. She fell, her screams swallowed up by the relentless crashing of the waves. The last thing she saw were their smiling faces, basked in the light of the bonfire, and their bodies moving towards her, chanting echoing in her ears. Her love-seeking journey through the dating app had plunged her into a nightmarish world of a catfish cult, a tale of digital romance that dived deep into terror. Number 2. Homeward bound hitchhiker nightmare. Driving late at night on desolate, winding roads, Evan had decided he had had enough. He needed a break from all the dating apps he'd been on lately. The fallout from his last online relationship took a heavy toll on him, and he soon decided to shut himself off from the world and find himself. He deliberately drove on a lonely road, hoping the isolation would help him drown his sorrows in the solitude. But as the clock ticked past midnight, his eyes felt heavy from exertion. Suddenly, a shadowy figure materialized under a flickering, distant streetlight. A hitchhiker waved a hand hopefully, a figure of loneliness equal to Evan's. Evan decided to stop, ignoring his instincts which argued against it. The hitchhiker was a woman in her 30s, her countenance etched with anxiety and panic. She was shaky, her hair disheveled and her clothes torn. She claimed to have narrowly escaped her abusive boyfriend and was desperate to get back home. Sympathy overrode Evan's initial caution, and soon they were back on the open road. As they cruised under the moonlight, the woman constantly checked the rearview mirror as if expecting some ghastly apparition to appear. They drove deeper and deeper into the woods, barely illuminating the twisted branches that loomed overhead. Evan was moderately uneasy, yet the woman's palpable fear seemed to intensify. His heart could not help but lurch at her gasps every time the car took a sharp turn around the bend. Suddenly she screamed, pointing at the rearview mirror. Terrified, Evan turned around, only to find nothing but darkness behind them. He tried to calm her down, but she was hysterical, wailing about a follower who was out for her blood. Concerned, he called the police, only to be met with static and interference. He ended the call, promising to take her to the nearest police station. As Evan continued to drive, the woman suddenly lunged at him. Catching him off guard, she managed to steer the car off the road. It crashed into a tree, the impact rendering Evan unconscious. When Evan woke up, the woman was nowhere to be found, but in her place was a note that read, "Thank you for the ride. I can finally go home now." A chill ran down his spine as he pieced it together. The woman's ghostly demeanor, her inexplicable panic, her screams, and her sudden disappearance. Evan thought about the ghostly tales he heard about phantom hitchhikers, and something in him wished he hadn't been so eager to pick up a late-night wanderer. Who knew what horrors would come from his ride home? Number 3. Serial Dater's Deadly Secret. In the modern world of digital romance, where love is quite literally a swipe away, one woman's pursuit of love leads her deep into a web of deception and dread. With a string of unsuccessful dates trailing behind her, Jessica had nearly given up on the notion of finding love online when she stumbled upon Eddie. He was charming, attractive, and checked all her boxes, leading her to believe that she had finally found her perfect match. If only she knew that beneath his charismatic persona lurked a deadly secret. Their first date was nothing short of perfect, enough to sweep Jessica off her feet. Eddie was a gentleman to the core, opening doors for her, pulling out her chair, and walking her home at the end of the evening. He made her feel special in a way that no one had in a long while. She was intrigued and excited about what their future held. Soon the dates started becoming more frequent, and Jessica found herself enthralled in what felt like the beginnings of a beautiful fairy tale. But as their relationship progressed, peculiar things began to occur. She began to notice small, unexplained injuries on Eddie's body. When she asked, he brushed it off with believable excuses like gym accidents or run-ins with a rowdy cat. Despite these oddities, Jessica found herself sinking deeper into Eddie's enigmatic charm. Until one evening, when the truth that Eddie had so skillfully veiled finally started to unravel. A friend had noticed Eddie's picture in a local news article. The headline read, "Suspected Serial Killer on the Loose." Eddie was a prime suspect in a series of ghastly murders, all his victims being women he had met on dating apps. Jessica was in utter disbelief. The man who had been treating her like a queen was a suspected killer. A wave of fear washed over her as she realized the potential danger she was in. Her mind raced, haunted by the image of Eddie's injuries, now painted with a sinister interpretation. On their next date, Jessica confronted Eddie. He didn't deny the accusations, but instead revealed the chilling truth that she was his chosen next victim. A rush of adrenaline surged through her as she grappled with the horrifying reality. Eddie lunged at her, but she managed to escape. Thankfully, the police were swift in their response, soon capturing the handsome devil that was Eddie. Jessica survived her encounter with the serial dater and his deadly secret, but was left with deep emotional scars. The exciting prospect of meeting someone new had turned into a terrifying ordeal she would never forget. The unpredictability of the online dating world had revealed its gruesome nightmare, leaving Jessica and many others like her in perpetual fear, haunted by the face of a charming stranger. Number 4. Stolen Identity Stalkers Unleashed. Stolen Identity Stalkers. Unleashed presents a chilling scenario that is and should be feared by those who partake in the world of online dating. It is a tale of deceit, horror, and unrelenting terror. Let's dive into this terrifying story. Amelia was a young and vivacious woman. After a disastrous end to an almost decade-long relationship, she decided to explore the world of online dating. Looking for a fresh start in the city, she found herself accosted by a wave of romantic possibilities on her new dating app. She was immediately drawn to one profile in particular, a man named Arnold, clean-cut and with a fascinating career in journalism. They chatted for a week, sharing jokes, stories, and common interests. Arnold was sympathetic to Amelia's previous relationship, and their bond deepened. Tempted by his charm and seemingly genuine interest, Amelia lowered her guard and shared more about her life. However, pieces didn't completely add up. Little did she know, the man she was speaking to was not Arnold at all. As they grew closer, strange occurrences began happening. Amelia started receiving packages that she hadn't ordered, phone calls from unknown numbers that would breathe heavily before hanging up, and weirdly accurate messages from Arnold that perfectly mirrored her routine and daily activities. Fear crept into her life, and suddenly her safe haven, her home, transformed into a chamber of horrors. Unbeknownst to her, she was dealing with a stolen identity stalker. Though she had never shared her address, nor any explicit details about her routine, Arnold seemed to know it all. It was as if he was always watching, lurking in the shadows. His texts began transforming from sweet compliments to eerie messages, echoing the ghostly happenings around her. Sensing something dark and evil, she decided to confront him. Demanding to meet, she confronted Arnold in a public place. To her shock, the face that greeted her bore no resemblance to the one on his dating profile. He was a complete stranger, yet he knew everything about her. Arnold, or whoever this man was, had unleashed a relentless terror onto her life, using her information to stalk and torment her under the guise of a stolen identity. In their encounter, a horrific truth was revealed. Arnold was indeed a journalist, but a crime journalist obsessed with his work. He confessed to stalking her, claiming it gave him pleasure to see fear etched in her eyes. Leaving her in absolute terror, he disappeared, leaving only his laughter echoing around the desolate park. As Amelia reeled in shock and horror, she realized how deeply he had entrenched himself in her life, despite her never having met him before. This story underscores the grim reality of a stolen identity's potential misuse. Deceit and shadows can lurk even in the brightest corners. As the night descended, she was left with the chilling reminder of her encounter, a fear that her stalker might return any time, locking her into a permanent state of paranoia. These chilling tales remind us that while modern dating apps can certainly spice up our love lives, they can also deliver an unpleasant surprise. Stay vigilant, stay safe, and tread lightly on the path that road might lead to. So if you found tonight's horror stories intriguing, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for your nightly dose of terror. Thank you for joining us in exploring these spine-chilling stories. Sleep tight and remember, not everything that swipes right is right. Until next time, Bill.